Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to WBQP TV, channel 12.8. I am Troy Mims SR. And ladies and gentlemen, we are live right now at the Cobb Center, downtown Pensacola. We expecting at any moment the mayor of Pensacola, along with the other city councilmen, and we're at the Cobb Center live. Now, as you can see behind me, we got some new things that's going to be going on in the city. So zoom in. We have some park trails, ladies and gentlemen. We have some beautiful park trails here. They're going to do a new project. This is an overhead view here, ladies and gentlemen, of the interstate going downtown. They're going to have a park here, a beautiful, beautiful park. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, this wonderful park is going to be beautiful. It's going to be an extra added attraction in our city. It's going to be just beautiful. It's going to be nature trails, walking trails. It's just going to be beautiful. New playgrounds. Also, if you can tune in right here, zoom in right here, this is going to be blocks and blocks and blocks. It's going to be beautiful. I mean, this is the overall view here. The park to me looks to be at least 1.5 miles long. That's a big park. So we have some more things to show you, but we're waiting on the mayor of Pensacola, Florida. We're waiting on the city councilmen. We're waiting on the full team to come in, and they're going to give a great presentation about this wonderful, wonderful park. So if you can span around over here. Now look at this one. That is beautiful. Come in a little closer. It's parks, walking trails. Also, they're going to have bike trails, wonderful, beautiful grass and lawns where we can have picnics. It's going to be nice trees. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a beautiful experience. Now, let's take a look over here, too, as well. Now, this is a map of the downtown Pensacola area, and I'm telling you, smack in the middle is going to be this beautiful, beautiful park. So I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, you want to stay tuned right here on Praise TV. You want to stay tuned right here on WBQP channel 12.8 for this great and wonderful revealing of this wonderful park in our wonderful, beautiful city here in Pensacola, Florida. Now, let's take a look right here, son. Let's take a look right here. We got Troy Jr. back there. He's the cameraman doing a fantastic job. Look, we're going to have, these are some other places and some events that we have year-round here in Pensacola. And I'm telling you, it's going to be beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look at this, too. And I'm showing you this in advance because when the presentation comes, they're going to be going through it kind of fast. So you might not be able to see all of the beautiful shots and pictures that we have right now. So right now is a great time. And this is over in the East Hill area. And it's going to be beautiful here. Davis Highway, which is now MLK area. Jordan Street area. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a great addition to Pensacola. It's going to be a wonderful attraction. And you're going to want to walk, run, jog, have a picnic. You're going to want to take advantage of this. I'm telling you, because I'm excited about it, and I can't wait to get out and get me some exercise and some fresh air. All right, let's see what else we got right here. All right, we just got some information. They're going to go through all of this information and take a look at this. This is This is how it looks now. And if you can get in close, TJ, you can get in close. This is how it looks now. This is the proposed site right now. This is the before. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't wait to see the after. So stay tuned. Stay tuned right here on WBQP TV. Stay tuned to TroyMims.com on Facebook. Stay tuned to Praise TV. We got some exciting news. I'm excited about this wonderful new park and new nature trail area. This is something Pensacola needs. And we need to use this to our advantage. And also, the surrounding areas. Come. And when this gets built, you can come and take advantage of this. So stay tuned. Stay tuned right here on WBQP TV and Praise TV. Stay tuned.
Sorry. There we go. So one of the things we need to do, we think, is to make the park more bold than the interstate. That's quite a goal, because that interstate is just so oppressive in that area. And if you think about it, if we take back the space that the interstate came through and diminished the neighborhood, if we take that back, we get to own it again. It gets to become a public asset. So we want to flip the narrative, where the highway becomes the background and the park becomes the foreground. But at the same time, there's some benefits we can use with a highway, which is to think about it as a shade and shelter device within the park. Another is to erase the interstate as the perceived boundary of the park. You saw that photo when we were inside the park, and everybody thinks that's the park space. So we need to think about how we can do that, right? And the highway kind of narrows and widens, and so how do we start to do that? One of the ways is to work with topography and plants, and we've shown you diagrams of that before. And that idea actually kind of struck us when we were on site and saw the existing amazing trees, and how much, when you were in front of them, they really started to hide the highway. And so we're thinking about that same approach. So the more green we can put in there, and the more trees we can put in there, the less the highway will have its way. Another is to weave the paths in and out of the interstate's piers. So the interstate is a very engineered and regularized roadway. And so we think you're really going to experience the park on the ground. And so we need to get back to human scale in there. And one of the ways is to kind of ignore that engineering and allow paths to kind of weave in and out of the piers. And you'll see that in the model. Another is to harness the stormwater requirements. We're really lucky that we are able to have funds to look at how we can improve Long Hollow Pond. And there are two basic ideas that we follow. One is where we need to store more water, we need to make it move, and then we also need to improve water quality. And we're doing all of those things in the park. So in the long park, we are basically making areas where water can be collected temporarily and then sink into the earth, so that it regenerates the aquifer, as well as just giving a place for water to clean itself before it ever gets anywhere else. And the stormwater pond, of course, is the focus of this of the plan. And we need to make that so that we can collect stormwater from the north, and then it reduces flooding to the south. And we have engineers working behind the scenes on a lot of that, making sure that whatever we're proposing can actually work. Another is to make Long Hollow a vital and vibrant feature in the park. It's a place that you're going to be able to go and be embedded in nature while you're still in the city. And then this is a perspective of what Long Hollow would look like. So right now the idea is that there are paths that get down to the edge. So right now you can only walk around a part of the outside, and you're separated by a fence. But we're looking at it as a place that you can really go into and feel like you're away. Running, places to sit. And then we've always said that the park should feel like Pensacola, and one of the ways to do that is to use the native ecologies to define both the pond and the park. So there's going to be a cohesiveness to what nature feels like across the park and in the pond. And it's going to be familiar to you, right, from things you've seen in your life. And it will preserve that for future generations as well. Is programming to organize and energize the site. Thank you. So right now, this is a diagram, right? As I said, there's not a lot of specificity here, but we're looking at how do you organize the site. And right now, all of these colored bubbles on the edges, which you'll also see on the model, are where a lot of activities will happen, right? So you come into the park, and there will already be some activity on the edges. And so from the street, you're going to be able to see a lively park. And we're looking at active recreation, passive play, arts, culture, and events, and flexible open spaces. And then in the center are passive uses. So they're flexible spaces for maybe pickup game, recreation, and then there's a whole series of paths that go throughout the site that connect you to every place. So we have taken all of the information that you have given us, which has been fantastic, about what you want to do and what you want to see in this park. And while we can't tell you where the courts are going to go, we have right-sized all of these things so that we know that they can be included. In other words, we spent a lot of time like cutting out these little courts and looking at the size of the seating area, and made sure that there was some place to put them in the park, and at times several locations that we could consider. So again, there's still lots of time for you to give your feedback, right? You can't go further than the process allows us. And this is a view inside the park. It's looking within the so we need to think about that programming for everyone, which we heard over and over again. If you can see the orange path, that is actually a multimodal path. And then there's a walking path where that couple is in the lower left-hand side. And then there down the middle where you see the lawn, that's where the passive areas occur. And you can see at the edges, there's a playground here. There's a seating area beyond, so we're, again, activating the edges. So, we have to face the park. We can't afford it all at once. We're looking at what costs are overall, and we are especially paying attention to what we can do in phase 1. So, as I said, the park will be built in phases over 20 years, 4 phases. Again, so we can know where we're going. And so the first phase is looking at the pond area as well as the area sort of at the core of the park next to the pool area. Seemed like a smart place to start because there's already a lot of important things there. And then if you see the light green shoulders of that phase 1 area, we have money to put in a multimodal path as well as other improvements. Phase 2 is landscaping those areas that only have the multimodal paths put in, right? We know we're not done there. But phase 2 will allow us to go back and put in more programming and more features and landscaping. Phase 3 is looking at the pond and the south area of the site. So you can see by this time, you actually have a lot of things already built. And then phase 4 is that area around the police station and around the police station and the city storage yard. So a lot of things have to happen before that can happen. And so that's being pushed into phase 4, because the park will still be pretty great even without that. That's going to really make it fantastic. And so there's all the phases together. It's interesting to note that, people have been concerned about what phase 1 is going to be, and will everybody see a difference? You will. We're affecting about 46 acres. So that's a lot of the 110 that are there. We're going to do our best to spread that money as much as we can. We don't quite know what that is. That's our next task at hand. Okay, this is where you come in. So how can you continue to help us in the process? Well, we need you to stay involved, speak up, show up, and as the park gets improved, claim it. Make sure that people start to recognize it as a park that is a vital part of the city. We also would like you to submit ideas for honoring the history of the neighborhood. We don't have that figured out, and we shouldn't have that figured out right now. And we're asking you to, I think there'll be a link on the website where you can offer ideas about that. And last, remember that making a great park takes time. This is a project of ours called The Gathering Place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is 2010, what it looked like, and I want you to pay attention to the public service of Oklahoma building right in the center of the slide. Because this years later, in 20, the same park from the same view. And so we know from our experience that if we keep going forward, that we can really make progress together over time. But people don't realize that landscapes take a very long time to implement. And there are many of our own projects that have taken 20 years. I'm working on a project that will be done this year that was started in 2007. So you just got to stay the course. Okay, so what's next? We're going to do community discussion and feedback around the model in the gym. We have everything set up for you in the gym. We have lots of boards, the model. We want you to talk with team members, add your comments. We still have the sticky notes. And Scott is going to give the presentation around the model, and he's going to lead the way with his stick. Yeah.
Hold on just a second. We can have, I gotta get our picture. So, Matt, can you turn on the light? I think it's right behind you. Okay, we gotta do this. This is what we do every time, remember? Okay, over here, everybody wave, say hey. All right, you guys, everybody wave. All right, so if you're wearing an HTW t-shirt, get to the gym, so you can welcome
He's been texting the whole time. Say he could barely hear and all that.
Don't have enough bandwidth and RAM. I'm still using the old computer. It will freeze up.
Gather around, everyone. Don't be shy.
We're not set up for mobile stuff, only stationary. So we have to switch rooms. They got it in 2 separate rooms. I'm not set up for that. Only stationary.
Scott, here you go. It's all good. Thank you.
We'll just give everyone a few minutes to gather around. We'll get started with the walk.
Close to Amy.
Gather around, everyone. There's plenty of room. Okay, so this model is at 1 inch equals 32 meters. So there's little tiny people all over, little tiny cars. So you can imagine yourselves in the park all over. And I just want to say welcome to your park. At the south, we have right Amy is on the east side, very familiar to the main east. We have Mount Street here. One, and then Maxwell to the very furthest one. Regarding the existing features, the skate park and community garden remain assets. We're just integrating them into an improved path network and planting system. You can see the police station here, the water tank, loaves and fishes, the pool area, and the emergency storage tank here. You will also notice that the topography all slopes towards Tarragona. So in a storm event, you can all imagine, I'm sure you've seen before, that's where the water pools. So our strategy is to use Long Hollow Pond as a sponge, if you will, or a big bathtub. It fills up with water. So in a storm event, some of these paths are underneath water, and then we begin to pump that water up to the north end of Hollis T. Williams through a series of cells. And all of those percolate down, as Laura mentioned. So 99% of the time, they're just really great passive lawn spaces, but can also accommodate that storm event. I think we'd like to give a minute for some general questions if anyone has them. And then we can break out and talk about the boards, which we have 22 boards, and a whole army of people wearing these shirts that would be happy to answer any detailed questions you may have. Yes, the system is designed to function without the pumps if needed. The pumps are kind of extra credit, if you will. And we're doing our very best with the area we have for the stormwater. So there's a question about sound baffling for the interstate. We have hired an acoustical engineer to survey the site and tell us where the loudest areas are. And it's kind of obvious once you hear the data, but it's directly underneath the highway. So we have some ideas about creating acoustic picnic shelters underneath there. And just the vegetation and topography by rippling the ground plane contributes to solving that issue as well.
Something is not done to serve that issue, it's going to be lost. Now, we've been working on this for over 10 years. We started with the original plan. Since that time, there have been at least 2 or 3 revisions of it. Each one is supposed to include an area for history. Is there any sort of way that we can get some sort of assurance that we can do that. Like I said, we don't want to lose the history of the neighborhood.
Yeah, so the question about history came up, and that is one of the huge impetuses of redoing this plan is to get that right. And as Laura mentioned, we're looking to the community to help us figure out that exact approach. We do have areas space planned for that throughout the park. I would say anything that's not green could be a potential zone where we could think about that. So maybe it's a system that's everywhere, maybe it's one isolated area that's more of a garden dedicated to that, and we're just super interested in creative solutions because we don't want it to be your typical bronze statue, you know, just in the middle of nowhere. We really want it to be an authentic honoring of that history, and that can only come from the people who have lived there and lived through all those years. So we would love your feedback.
We're outsiders, right? So we need you to tell us how the neighborhood and the important people in this neighborhood and the whole idea of the neighborhood should be honored. Really, we're looking for ideas. We can take ideas and turn them into solutions and be as creative with them. But you need to tell us. We really, really want that. So that's at the website.
Okay.
Would you explain what's happening in Brook Street?
Yeah, absolutely. So Blount Street, not Blount, per the active transportation plan, we're working with the planned bike lanes there. So on a bike, you're able to still traverse east-west. On a vehicle, there's a roundabout that provides parking access along here, and then it ties into Gonzales. So it's a bit of a chicane as you move, a priority of pedestrian safety over vehicular efficiency.
So Brook Street will no longer be crossed.
It will not be a vehicular accessible street, and I will tell you, we need to validate that through a traffic engineering study.
At a much good problem.
Yeah, so this is the sort of feedback we'd like to hear from you. If that's a comment you have, we'll certainly integrate it. Like I said, we'll be doing a whole traffic study to validate these ideas and make sure it's not causing unintended consequences.
How you might connect the north or the south of the new sites.
So the question came up with connecting north to south at Cervantes. Right now, we're trying to work with the CSX Railway to determine if we can fit a path underneath that existing opening here. And then we would like to make improvements to this intersection and create an at-grade crossing here. So it's essentially both the east and west have access ways.
Can you explain to the public a little bit more about multimodal and why it's important here, and also maybe why two-way MLK and Davis is important for this project?
So, Councilman Broughton asked about the importance of two-way and MLK and Davis. Understand that MLK and Davis right now are one-way streets that are 2 lanes. Whichever way you want, whether it's people driving the wrong way down the one-way, blow through stop signs, it's a safety issue and it's a community vibrancy issue to have 2 lanes that you're encouraged that are 12 feet wide and as ultimately miniature freeways to be moving at 45 to 50 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood. If there are probably people here who live on that street and can attest to that better than me, but I can tell you, if you imagine whatever street you do live on, if people had 2 full lanes with no stops that could drive 45 miles an hour, imagine how that would impact your livelihood, your safety of your children and grandchildren. So we were running into a time crunch with FDOT was due, it was on the work plan, to repave MLK and Davis in the exact same form that it has been. This has been discussed to turn it into a 2-way street, both of them, the 2-way streets for years. But we're running out of time because if they go to design it as a 1-way street again, and come back and repave it, which is where we were going, then that dream is over for a generation, right? They would come back and do that very soon after. So with the help of Schenectady County, the City Council, we had a time clock on us to help supplement the funding of design. So for $600,000 additional dollars, but it's going to be about a $6 million increase in fee to go 2 ways. very expensive to do. But we were going to lose the ability to do that at all if we didn't go cobble that money together, and we did. So $400,000 from the city, $200,000 from the county, so that those two roads will be designed as two-way streets that will be safer. And those were designed that way before there was the interstate. And so now with the interstate system, there's not the need for that type of north-south movement because you're already making that movement on I-110. So we think that would really bring increased safety, walkability, both for drivers and for pedestrians up and down the east side neighborhood. So we're very excited for that.
And the other half of the councilwoman's question. Multimodal means all modes of transportation that aren't cars. So we see a lot of biking, skateboarding, rollerblading, razor scootering along this loop here. So it'd be a very safe place to learn to ride a bike, to take your family to go for a little stroll, and we've heard a lot of positive momentum from the skate park. Even at 5 a.m. this morning, someone was skateboarding there. So we want those eyes on those people on this park all the time, just to self-police it, if you will.
Can you do a tour from north to south of what those areas are, so the flexible lawns and
Yes, so one other note about the road network, and it was to Mayor Reese's point. We want to prioritize higher volume on the more arterial roads and lower volume on the park frontage. So you'll see up at North Hain, we've broken that little extent, and that's to discourage people from using Hain as a highway on-ramp. We've seen people pretending, like psychologically, they're on the highway here, just going Mach 1, so they can no longer do that. That reduces vehicular speeds on the perimeter roads. And then that allows us to create a more continuous passive park core. So we have 2 football fields, one full size and one youth size for the Rattlers who currently use it right now. And in the middle of those 2 is an existing growth of trees with a pretty majestic large canopy tree there. So we see that as being kind of a place to relax between games, etc. And then along the edges, we have our weaving pathways with barbecue areas and different more kind of relaxing edges. So you could imagine your family get-togethers. The children are running on the open lawns and you're sitting comfortably in those gardens along the perimeter. As we move to the south, we have another open body of water. This contributes to the stormwater solution. And the existing courts that were there are now relocated along here and here as well. Around the pool, we just have improved planting and pathways. And as I said earlier, now we're on to our multimodal loop with lawn areas, gathering areas, and play areas. So that kind of brings you down to Gonzales. Gonzales has the roundabout here, a 2-way road. And then we're thinking about, as you cross Cervantes Street into the space, having real long, deep views to give you a sense of invitation into the park. As we get to south of Cervantes Street, currently a large portion of this area is dedicated to an impoundment lot for the police station. Our proposal is to relocate the impoundment lot, still keep the police station and all the associated parking, but that allows us to create a much more generous access through the park and many options that if you live in the east side neighborhood, you can traverse the park and go to the downtown. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the community garden, the skate park, an additional play area, and then a new access across the CSX railway so that you have a park entry at Wright Street and an invitation right into the north south access of the park.
As far as the pond goes, it looks like you're bringing it out further. Are you removing some existing old buildings or something, or what is happening over here? Because I feel like there's some more buildings over here, right?
Yeah, there's a long process of property acquisitions that the city's going through and buyouts for those parcels. So the intent is that those are purchased for improving the stormwater function in the city.
Is this doubling the size of the pond itself, or because it seems quite a bit larger, right?
We're still going through the exact volume calculations, and we should have those answers to you in the next meeting. We don't want to say anything publicly yet.
Right.
So you just said on Gonzales you have a roundabout on the interstate? Because there's First City Arts Center, which has what, 1,000 kids in the summertime? Or, yeah, right there, so it needs something to slow that traffic down there.
Yeah, the intent is that there would be a lot of traffic. The question was about the roundabout and Andover Street underneath Gonzales. And the intent is with the bike lanes and improved street network that you really allow for ADA accessible pathway access, but also safer access into the park than what we have right now. The question is related to McGee Field and if that'll be part of the project. Right.
Well, I know it's what's the new development to build up. What's the road here now? Where do they go as far as?
Like Saturday football games?
Right, bathroom, all of that. You just have to feel it.
You're saying that there's support infrastructure. Yeah, we were exploring the idea of an additional building to the north. That's something that we may want to include in addition to that's something that's great feedback. Because we did discuss that with the rafters.
So are there public restrooms anywhere?
The hope is that there are public restrooms throughout. As Laura said earlier, we haven't got to that level of detail of laying those out necessarily. But I think for a park of this scale, you want at least 2 or 3. Our hope is some of the existing buildings, we can somehow figure out a way to make them multi-purpose. But I would imagine we'll need a couple additional small structures.
To add on to your question or your statement about the McGee Field, I believe that's the practice field for the Raptors. That's not the McGee Field, that's the practice. Yes, where they practice run up and down the bank and all that stuff. My son wasn't saying.
The comment was about McGee Field and what that's used for versus the Hall's TV in the set.
I don't know if this is the proper moment to bring this up, but this is more, I think the term is a collector blunt, and I'm not sure Gonzales has the true infrastructure, like a light here, lights over at MLK and Davis, and Gonzales is very narrow once you get past 12th Avenue, and it turns into more of a thoroughfare than Blunt is right now. I'm not sure the surrounding infrastructure supports it.
Yeah, and as I said, we need additional study on that idea as a vision. What we're able to do is proof of concept that the roads need to be modified some way, somehow.
Right.
As we develop the plan, I'd imagine there will be much more study, maybe some options explored about that. So this is kind of a moment in time, if you will, about what the best approach is, and it requires that study to validate the vision.
See here that you located the tennis course that was there. So that the additional water holding pond is going to be there. So where would, I think you was talking about from here somewhere that's going to be possibly located in where else?
So as this is drawn, we know we can fit 3 basketball courts in a small play area here. And the tennis courts, we're thinking about placing further to the south here, just to kind of distribute the active use more along the axis of the park and have passive areas in between. So that's right now the current thinking.
There was some tennis courts right there before, south of Loaves and Fishes. There's a concrete pad that Miss Reeves used to have a tennis program there for the youth many years ago. Right, matter of fact, right in that area, right there, south of Loaves and Fishes, right there in that green space. So now would this become an active play? I mean, right now, we Rattlers, they we practice here because there's not really a formal field. So with this kind of transform to a multi-purpose formal field, possibly for not only just football, you got soccer, you got other things that could possibly take place there, or are we just looking at a work week? I see it's kind of like lined out, so as a formal type facility.
So one of the benefits of closing Avery, which is here, is that we're able to fit a full-size football field between the columns. Right now, your existing field is north of the existing growth of trees, and it's actually a trapezoid in plan. So if we repurpose that into a youth-size field that fits as a rectangle, and then a full-size field here. So during a Sunday afternoon, it's probably a big open field to go run around on and spend time with your family. And then at game time, you have all the practice fields you would need.
Okay. And so I know there's some interest in people as far as express interest in the pickleball situation. So would that be, I guess, take the tennis courts would kind of like be a multi-use type court setting?
Yeah, that's why the framework continues to be a vision and a framework plan, because we are going to have conversations with you about the exact striping at a later date. And we've heard a lot of positive momentum for pickleball and a lot of not so positive momentum. So we'll have specific conversations about that as the plan unfolds.
Last thing, in the mock drawings, we kind of talked about an amphitheater right there south in that green space there. I don't see, I know this is supposed to just, we're just doing topography and the geography part and the stormwater part right now. I know the other part is down the line, it's going to be phased in. But I don't see.
So that's actually a great question, and we haven't mentioned this yet. But along the east side neighborhood, we envision more neighborhood scale programming. So the things you would want as part of your everyday life, small play areas, sports courts, etc. As far as regional programming, what you'd bring your friends and family to go see when they visit, we think that's better ordered along Palafox because of its relationship to downtown. So in this area, we envision destination playground, something that's really exciting, something you'd be willing to drive several hours to take your family, not just a traditional play area. And then to the very north, that is a sloped lawn that can accommodate a large paved area that you could set up a stage, you could inflate a movie screen, and then the pink areas would be areas for food trucks, for farmers markets, for places for entrepreneurs, and even on a parade day for Mardi Gras or something, maybe this would be the terminus, and that's where you would end your parade, and everyone could gather and have a great time as a whole. So this side accommodates larger scale groups. We would imagine if there's an amphitheater here, these people might not be too thrilled about it at night. So over in that corner, it's a little bit more appropriate, and it's the furthest from the highway, so the acoustics are much better in that corner as well. Maybe we'll do like one or two more questions, and then we'll allow everyone to break up and see the boards.
The water treatment facility there really sticks out to me if I'm in the park. Like, it feels like something. Is there a way to match it in? Is there? Is that a secure building?
We would absolutely love to paint it. We would love to integrate it into the park more. And you'll see this little paved area. We're actually thinking it'd be a great object to project on. So this would be a smaller scale, maybe outdoor education area that you could actually project on the facade at night and do something really interesting with it. We would love for that barbed wire fence to go away because that's not very inviting as a park edge, and really plant around it, and yeah, maybe even hire a local artist to do something. We don't think that's the appropriate place to honor the East Side neighborhood. Rather, it could be a different piece of art or some expression of Pensacola.
I see in this area here that you've done some curb extensions all throughout, and I really like that. However, whenever the rest of it kind of looks like a road, it doesn't really invite for people to cross as pedestrians. It doesn't invite people to stop as drivers. So how do we feel about something that maybe we add some I think there's some paved, some more brick roads just on these corners here, so that way it kind of invites people to cross the street better.
So the question was about the pedestrian access at all the intersections, and that's one question we asked ourselves as well. At the beginning we said, how many entrances should we have? And we started off with maybe 2 or 3,
And then after meeting with the community, quickly realized you should have as much porosity along the edges as you possibly can, and as many pathways to enter the park. So this can become a part of people's daily lives. You can spend 5 minutes in this park and get that experience of nature every day if you want. So we're fully supportive of as many traffic calming measures along Hain and the surrounding perimeter roads.
Where do you see the most volume of people going east to west? Like when they
So the question is about access east to west.
Is most of the people will be around this area, you think?
Yeah, the CSX requirements to cross a train line is a very big technical challenge, so we have to be very resourceful with where you can cross it safely. And right now we're proposing at Avery, at Blount, and then finally down to the south here to create a direct connection from the downtown core. So maybe we'll open it up to the boards and feel free to have a conversation with anyone wearing an HTW shirt. Laura was asking if we talked about the pond. Thank you, everyone.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we are live at the Cobb Center, and I have the pleasure to talk to our mayor.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. We got Councilman Broughton
and Councilman Broughton. How are you?
You just call me a man. I'm just playing. Hi, everyone.
Yes, we're live on WBQP TV, so tell us about the plans that's going on.
Yeah, this is very exciting and a lot of years in the making. Actually, if you look at this, there's been conversation about, after Hurricane Ivan, which has now been 21 years, about saying we've got a stormwater issue, and then let's go back 50 years to when the interstate was put in and it disconnected and created really what we've kind of said is a lost neighborhood. And there's so many stories, you're hearing them tonight, of people who grew up here, their parents and grandparents grew up here, and so it's an honor to bring this forward, not only to be able to have this conversation, but to be able to have procured almost $42 million in grant funding to complete the largest single stormwater investment in the history of our city. And so what we talked about is trying to serve everybody, all 55,000 people in whatever neighborhood that they're in. And what we're looking at and having a conversation about today is the largest community generational park investment and stormwater investment that's ever happened anywhere in our city, and it'll be right here in the East Side neighborhood and in this Long Hollow area. So we're so excited for this, and you see this turnout. We're excited that other people are excited about it, and you know, the city has an obligation to engage the community in an improved way, and I think we have really stepped up these last couple of years and done that. But that's only half the battle. The community has to engage, and so it's so inspiring to see neighbors and residents being out here, our council members being out here just to share their vision, their thoughts, their concerns, and you know what that amounts to? It amounts to us having the best possible park you can.
And I'm looking forward to it. You know, one thing I can say, that the space is being unused, I think.
Definitely. One thing I'm thankful for is the fact that we have some of our oldest citizens here, and they'll be able to see what we did with it. So imagine a time where they remember when it was an active neighborhood. They remember when churches were down there, stores were down there, and other businesses. Oh wow, see? And in their, and in their lifetime, we're able, in a way, make things right. It's not totally right, because totally right would be no interstate and put your house back. But with what we can do, we can remember the community history, we can remember the neighborhood, and we can honor the people who developed it. Not a few weeks ago, we met with some of the people who were displaced because of it, but we had them come down for a special Hollis T. Williams Park meeting just for them. And they got to share some of their interests and memories about growing up in the park to help us put those things in the design of the space. You'll see it in the mock-up here, or the miniature, I don't really know the exact word, I'm sorry. But we try to get everything. We try to get everyone to come out and express their opinion, express their voice, lift their voice, and we respond to their needs. And some of their wants, because I want historic markers, everybody knows.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I look at it this way. It was underutilized. As you said, it has been for decades. And what's I think so amazing about this moment in time, that we have funding, not just talking about it, but walking the walk, that we've got the funding to really make something happen. What's so interesting to me symbolically is when the interstate came in, and it's in the current state that it's in, to me is a symbol of a forgotten neighborhood. And then when you see an event like this, and you see these renderings and this huge model in front of us, you see something found again, and you see something invested in again. And so it's both literal and symbolic, I believe, that we are coming back and saying more than 50 years after this neighborhood was left forgotten, that it's found again in this way, and a bigger investment than the city's ever seen. So we're so excited for it, and yeah, we appreciate you guys being here and spreading the word. Thank you for having it. Yeah, and we encourage everybody to continue. This is not it. To continue to stay engaged. Our social media channels on our website. We'll continue to get the word out. I think we're at 23 community meetings and counting. So 23. Yeah. So lots of times cities and counties that might have a project like this, they'll have one meeting, maybe two. Yeah, and we have tried to change the game on community engagement and what that means in the city of Pensacola. So, and I think tonight's a shining example of that. Very shining example.
So I look forward to people like you who had their church and other folks with businesses to be here when we're finally done with this project and we cut the ribbon. That's what I want standing there. The people who get to return. And the mayor made a good point. It was once a lost neighborhood, but we're refinding it now. We're finding ourselves again, and that is a symbol for what the community could be doing.
That is awesome. Well said. Thank you so much, Councilwoman.
I was just joking earlier.
I know. Well, I tell you what. It's a question that they told me to ask. What are we going to do about Juneteenth?
Yeah. Well, I believe we got a parade coming on Juneteenth and more. Yeah. As we say, Watson event as well. In my 2 years here.
There are many.
I was gonna say. You know what happens right around this time? Me and Councilman Button get together and say, "What's the plan for Juneteenth?" But now since we're now a snow city, we were unfortunately not able to have that in our MLK parade. So we thought that was a great idea to move it to Juneteenth and be able to still not miss out on the celebration, and not just watch it go away. But
so if anyone knows of any events, there's the Juneteenth Pensacola page. You can put it in there, and that's especially for events from Florida Emancipation, remember, which is the 20th of May, up until Juneteenth. And so we put them all in there. Everyone can access it. We also share it through Visit Pensacola. So there's a lot of publicity about all the events. And in fact, I love Pensacola's Juneteenth celebration because remember, there was no Orlando, there was no Miami. So they don't get we are actually a place that had emancipation. So when I'm inviting everyone to come right here to Pensacola, to a place that actually emancipated slaves. Actually, my family was emancipated here in Pensacola. Yeah, so it's very special for me. And I would also say it was special for people who were not just got their freedom, but released other people who enslaved people. They were in a way freed too, in the spiritual sense, if that makes sense, because they no longer had to hold on to that legacy of slavery. So it was for people who were freed and for people who freed people, and everyone was emancipated, everyone was free. It reminds us to exercise those freedoms and exercise those rights that thousands of people died for. So I'm looking forward to this, for the Emancipation Day to Juneteenth events, May 20th to Juneteenth. Everyone come out and we'll enjoy the Watson Family Foundation event. And
Give them the website one more time.
oh, it's on Facebook, Juneteenth Pensacola.
Juneteenth Pensacola. www.juneteenthpensacola.
All right, hey, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Yeah,
I appreciate talking with you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I'm praying for you. I'm saluting you. Anything we can do, you let us know. We on your side.
Help tonight. You're spreading the word on all this great project, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are live at the Cobb Center. You heard it first right here on WBQP TV, Praise TV. Ladies and gentlemen, this park is going to be beautiful. And once again, like the mayor and the councilwoman said, it's going to connect this community again. This community needs to be revived. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the season. This is the project that brings us back together and connects us. As you can pan over here, you can see that we still have people out. I'm telling you, the crowd is fabulous. It's enormous. People are very, very interested in this project. I see Brother Eddie Todd. I see school board representative Mr. David. So it's Mr. David Williams. It's a lot of people interested in this project, interested in putting their 2 cents into the design phase. So, like the mayor said, it's been like 23 different meetings. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue to cover all of the meetings right here on Pensacola's own WBQP TV, the Pensacola Urban Network, Praise TV. So stay tuned. We're going to hang around. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to hang around a little bit, and we're just going to enjoy the festivities, enjoy the information, and bring it to you as we find out. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a Escambia County School Board representative, my friend, Mr. David Williams. How you doing, sir?
Doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here today. And please tell us how this project really impacts you.
This project's named after my father. Hollis C. Williams was my father. The first appointed and elected African-American to the city council. And so it's near and dear. My brother's here and my family is all involved. So that was my dad, and we're just so happy to see what's going on. He would be just elated to think somebody's named something after him. Yeah.
That is awesome. I did not know that till you told me. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I mean, this is an honor.
Yeah, well, it is, but it's much needed for the neighborhood. I'm glad to see that the impact it's having, the community, bringing the community together, very diverse community, because that's how we are in this county. And then getting the input is so important, and then to have my father's name on it, oh man, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yes, it is.
Well, I tell you, I love the different phases.
Yeah,
I mean, the different design, the models that she went over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be beautiful.
It's going to be beautiful, and also it's going to be community-minded, community-friendly. I started calculating the days. I said, I'm 86 years old when it's completed. I pray to God I'm still here to see it.
You will be here. My son said, Daddy, you're going to be in your 70s. I said, oh, wow. If you have to push me, you make sure you push me through that path.
Yeah. Well, look, we just thank you for getting the word out to the people, and thank you for what you're doing.
Yes.
And also for honoring my dad.
Yes, sir.
We just made it. We're so happy for this.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Anytime. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it first right here from Mr. David Williams. The park is named after his dad, and I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that is history in effect right here. Pan around a little bit and get the design phase and get the people as they are watching. Ladies and gentlemen, all right. How you doing, my brother?
How you doing? Good to see you. Always good to see you. I'm telling you, man, you guys are everywhere. You make sure that you keep the community informed. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you. We try. Thank Vernon for giving me a shout. He's in Las Vegas right now. Wow. So, you know, he's chilling out, learning some new things to make the station much, much better. And he said, Troy, I need you to cover this. I said, no problem. What's going on?
Exactly.
So tell me about this project.
This is going to be a great project for the inner part of Pensacola, which I've been in this part of the city and the east side community now for about 20 years. So I've been in Pensacola for 30. So I've always known that this part, East Pensacola, east side of Pensacola, is a jewel of Pensacola. It's a soul. Always call it the soul of Pensacola. Exactly. Right here in the middle. And so this development is going to be great. You know, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be something that's definitely needed. Great revitalization. Great fresh impact to the community. So hopefully we can achieve three things with this: recreational revenues and the resources that we natural resources that we have there. So I know they're trying to do it to relieve some pressure from flooding, expanding Long Hollow, things of that nature. The water's flowing down here to Tarragona, but hopefully that at the end of the day, east side does not get lost in the sauce.
Exactly.
But it's going to be great. Hopefully it becomes a walking honoring of the lost neighborhood that was there. It becomes a outdoor historical walking experience, and that's what we're going to go for.
And it seemed to connect. It looks to be about a mile and a half long. It really connects different little areas of the whole community and bring them together as a whole.
Oh yeah. So this planning process has been going on, been happening over a number of years. So it's kind of like getting to the design, the real aspect. So the first part is going to be the stormwater type, stormwater and the topography.
And we really need to attack that because look at this past flood.
Oh yeah. So that's going to try to address some of that, and then it's going to start putting in the infrastructure where it comes in with the tennis courts, the football field, all the recreational amenities after that. But first, the topography is going to go in first. You know, the hardscapes, the landscapes, things of that nature. So it's going to be pretty exciting to see the development.
It really is.
So
it's a fresh perspective in this neighborhood.
Right.
As a lot of churches was lost when the interstate came through. I know our church, Bethel A&E, church was lost.
Yes.
So it kind of brings new questions of connection.
Right, and so that's the whole thing. So they hopefully have some mirrors and some history as you walk through it. And they will say, let this be the
markers,
exactly, the monument of the black community of Pensacola of this side to be a walking historical outdoor historical garden, as you will. So don't sell grandma house yet. Don't sell mama house yet. You guys hang on to your property, and also, and if you can, move back to the east side, baby, because the east side is the best side, and that's how we ride.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
I tell you still smoking, grilling.
Oh yeah.
Tell everybody about that right quick.
So see us at 1216 North 9th Avenue. East side is the home of East Kings Corner Cafe at 1400 Davis Highway. We have relocated that operation to 1216 North 9th Avenue, which is
so you move.
Yeah, we're 5 minutes away, right around the corner, 5 minutes away, right there in the corner, 9th and Gonzalez.
Wow, yeah, you're in a better spot.
Well, I'm not gonna say better, but different.
It's different,
yes, because I love the avenues. It's just because they had an indoor opportunity. So tonight is jazz night, so we're able to do indoor stuff. So it's entertainment. We got live jazz on Tuesdays, live jazz on Wednesday, everyone. So we can do indoor. We got a full cocktail and daiquiri bar inside. Got the patio, so we have things for multi-purpose, recreational, and also we do venue rental too. So it just allowed us to do some different things. But don't get me wrong, that little blue building on the corner of Lee and Davis, that's my heart. That's our home. That's right. It's the east side. So come and see us at 1216 North 9th Avenue, Pensacola, Florida. We'll take care. We're still doing the great things, from the smoked ribs to smoked wings to Cajun bowls, all of that. So
Cajun bowls are very out of sight. They're very delicious. Everything is delicious.
Thank you.
Now, I heard you made a statement that you do the space for events.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
So what that allowed us to do to have an event space. That's a nice boutique event space. I've done weddings, baby showers. I've done repasses. We do birthday parties. We do all of that. And we do community events too. So, but you can look us up at 1216north.com, 1216north.com, and you can see all the things we do. You can go on there and you can say, I need catering. We're sponsoring catering. You say, I want to do an event. And then you can just look at our hours and our menu. So it's really a community space. It's a community collective space. So that's what we strive to do, and that's what we're doing. At 1216 North 9th Avenue, a few blocks up from Krispy Kreme, right down the right across from the old barns, as people say.
And that's part of this community.
That's right.
Absolutely part of this design phase.
That's correct.
Part of this park that we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen.
We're not H&O, but we're close.
You're close.
We're right down the street from where H&O was on Gonzalez.
Man, you bring back memories.
That's right.
And I thank you for carrying that on.
Oh, of course, yeah.
The H&O,
the Good family, shouts out to them, because those are trailblazers. So we just stand on the shoulders of families like that has a legacy in the community, and so we try to keep that spirit of that collective space at 1216 North and at East Kings at 1400. So,
congratulations.
Big shout out to WBQP, man. I started out a long time ago when I first got here. I worked for Vernon. I used to intern at the studio just like your son did. I used to run the little soundboard and the TV board and help him do shows. So big shouts out to Vernon Watson for keeping it going, man. He's a pillar of the community. He's a pillar. WBQP is a pillar of the community, and you guys are historical. Thank you all for all you do. Thank you.
All right, let's get a shot of the team. This is the shot, ladies and gentlemen, people that are doing the work. Wow. This is awesome. This is awesome. Well, I tell you what, we're going to be wrapping it up here. We're going to be wrapping it up. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be our final piece. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Troy Mims. Thank you for tuning in, joining us for this special live presentation on WBQP, the Pensacola Urban Network Praise TV. So this part, we got many more meetings, many more times for you to get some information. Go on the Pensacola website, check us out, check this park out, get more information. This is your time to put your input in that can make a difference. Thank you so much.